You got it?
So welcome everyone to our November meeting. Today our guest speaker is Elizabeth Courville, Raiford. So she's going to be talking about her business that she owns. She's the owner of Harvesting Nutrition, and so she's going to share with us her journey.
Hi everyone, my name is, you can call me Liz. I'm super excited to be here. I hope some of you maybe have an interest in like entrepreneurship, private practice. I feel like that's definitely an up and coming sector of our field. So you'll get to hear a little bit about like how I started mine and kind of my specialty areas, and there'll certainly be lots of time for like Q&A, like if there's something I don't cover that you're interested in or want to know about. It's certainly not an extensive PowerPoint, just kind of to keep me on track. But I tried to like include some stuff that you guys like typically ask your speakers. So a little bit about me, I did graduate from LSU as well. That was back in 2020 when I graduated, so that was COVID time, so it was a crazy time to be graduating and then going into like looking for an internship, like with everything being virtual. So that definitely had an impact on my internship experience, but overall had a great internship experience at Brand New. That's like really the only local option for internships here in Baton Rouge, and they have a really great, like well-rounded program. So I graduated from that program doing my internship and master's degree back in 2021, and since then I had passed my exam and started off with some clinical work, eventually transitioned into more PRN with clinical work and started my private practice, and I've been doing that for about 2.5 years now. So I'm still a baby dietitian. I definitely don't know it all, but I'm happy to share about what I've learned so far. This is a little bit about me personally. Like my favorite food is a Caesar salad with a side of French fries. Running is like my favorite form of movement. As of right now, I feel like I go through phases, but me and my husband are training for a full marathon right now, so that's been fun and a lot of time consuming. I'm a mom. I have a 2-year-old, so I've been very busy. Love all things outdoor, coffee, baking, all of that good stuff. So this is more about me like as a provider. So I went ahead and included a couple of like my counseling approaches that I have integrated into my private practice. The first one might sound familiar just from your education here. So I use person-centered counseling, which operates from the humanistic belief that, you know, the client is inherently driven toward the capacity for just bettering themselves and wanting to be healthy. I also use anti-diet and weight neutral approaches. So really what that means is I'm not necessarily like prescribing super rigid diet rules for most of my clients, and I'm not necessarily like doing weigh-ins unless it's like a severe eating disorder case, let's say. For most of my clients, I'm focusing on other health indicators to kind of tell us progress. So modalities would be things like intuitive eating. How many of y'all heard of intuitive eating before? Yeah, okay. I hadn't heard about that like whenever I was at LSU. It's not something we really learned about, I feel like, within our curriculum at all. But I do feel like it's much more popularized now. I'm glad to hear that y'all have heard about that approach. I definitely try to integrate like motivational interviewing. I do a lot of meal planning, grocery shopping, stuff like that with my clients, just the practical side of things to help them achieve their goals that we're setting. I really work on like relationship with food if they do come from a place with some disordered eating tendencies or even the eating disorders. We work on just creating a more neutral relationship with food versus thinking about it in such an extreme black and white way. I integrate a lot of like holistic approaches into my work with clients. Like I'm talking about sleep habits, stress, bowel movements, energy levels, all of that at every single session. Obviously talk about exercise a good bit with my clients as well. And a health at every size approach, like I mentioned, more of a weight neutral approach. My specialty areas are, and my main passion area is disordered eating disorders. But I have built up a really large population of clients with PCOS. So I would say, like, honestly, 90% of my client load right now has PCOS, actually. Also passionate about, like, pregnancy and postpartum, sports nutrition, thyroid health, and then, like, vegan and vegetarian diets as well. So those are my favorite areas to work with. Scrolling down. So I have, like, those specialty areas that I work with, and like encompassing that, I'll see like any of these ranges on a typical basis. So with eating disorders, I've worked with anorexia, bulimia, binge eating, and ARFID. Disordered eating, there's kind of a fine line between disordered eating and like an actual diagnosable eating disorder. I feel like disordered eating is very rampant in the society that we live in. So that would be things like just chronic dieting, like hopping on and off diets, like people really not knowing how to eat without being on a strict diet, essentially. Also, like just thinking about food in a really black and white way. Following really strict food rules, whether it's total intake, types of foods, or like really specific time intervals that they feel like they have to abide by for whatever reason. So I see a lot of that in my work, but I also see general nutrition counseling clients, people who just want to better their health and learn more about nutrition, because a lot of people don't have just a basic nutrition knowledge. Like if we think about like when we grew up and we were in like middle school, let's say, like did we get education about like how to build our plate out? No, I would say probably most of us didn't. So it's like as we enter adulthood, I feel like people are so confused now, like not having had any sort of basic nutrition education. So, and with social media and the internet nowadays, people are exposed to all sorts of nutrition information and misinformation. So that makes it really hard for people to figure out like what's gonna work best for them. So I help clients like figure out what's best for them as well. Just in a general nutrition counseling sense. Like I said, I see a lot of PCOS and like also hypothyroidism. Occasionally I'll have some insulin resistance or like pre-diabetics or diabetics. I see a lot of gastrointestinal issues within my practice. There is actually a lot of overlap with eating disorders and disordered eating with IBS-like symptoms. So I see a lot of that. Not as much diverticulitis or celiac, but occasionally have seen those. And a lot of times I'll have cardiac issues be involved or overlapping in just some of my client population. So that's a little bit more about like what types of clients I might see. So I started my private practice as completely virtual, just with like coming out of COVID times, and also the appeal of like not having overhead for renting out an office space. So I started out like my first year and a half-ish to 2 years like just completely virtual, and that has worked really great so far. Since then I did have a little bit of demand for some in-person, so I now have very limited availability for like a few in-person clients on a weekly basis. But as far as like rates, I know like that was one thing I had no clue about, like what should I be charging people. So I like took a lot of time and did a lot of research and compared like what other dietitians were charging, and I kind of came up with like sliding scale private pay chart that I follow, and people are able to utilize that. But I also take a lot of insurance, which I'll talk a little bit about on the next slide, which has really made my services more widely available. I have been able to grow my clientele list like significantly just by accepting more insurances. But there are lots of cons to accepting insurance as well. But mostly has been good for me so far. I offer initial assessments, which are typically 90 minutes long. Sometimes I'll do a 60-minute, but I like to have a lot of time at that first appointment with my clients. I do 45 to 60-minute follow-up sessions. I do offer meal support, especially for like eating disorder clients. If they have a specific fear food, or if they're really just struggling, like being isolated and like not having one to eat with for accountability purposes, a meal support session can be helpful for those types of clients. And I do offer a 6 or 12-week program for runners specifically who are like training for races and things of that nature. So that is not as like high touch as like one-on-one nutrition counseling per se, but is definitely there to help give support to that specific subset of people. Yeah, that is a little bit about my services. These are all of the insurances that I'm able to currently accept. And I don't know if you guys, like you're dietetic students, so you may have actually gotten ads for FAY or heard about FAY, but it is like a new platform that is essentially trying to make dietitian services more widely available. And they partner with all of the big insurance companies, and essentially by getting licensed in Illinois, I was able to get credentialed with like all of these insurances because FAY is based out of Illinois. But anyways, FAY kind of like is my electronic health record platform. It's like we schedule appointments on there, and then they also handle like all of the billing, which is really nice. Like I no longer have to do, like I do a little bit of billing on my own, but they handle the billing. And what's really nice about being on FAY is they guarantee me reimbursement every month. Normally with insurance, sometimes claims are denied or they really don't reimburse you very much. But with FAY, it's really nice because they guarantee full reimbursements every month, no matter if the claims that they're submitting on behalf of my clients are getting denied or refuted or anything like that. So FAY has made, like, again, like accepting more insurance a lot easier, and also just has made my services more widely accessible, and they actually help with marketing as well. Like, you'll, like, whenever I Google myself, there's a couple of different things that pop up because FAY, like, has its own, like, profile for me, and it, like, boosts it, and that marketing side of things is nice. Now, I'm licensed in quite a couple of states, and then some of these other states that I'm able to see clients in just depends on their specific state license regulations. Not every state requires licensure, and then sometimes there are stipulations, especially with like virtual services. So I am able to see clients outside of Louisiana, which is really cool. And that's obviously also helps to build up my clientele as well. So FAY is really awesome. If you're looking to go the private practice route, they've been a real game changer for sure. They just like make the back end of everything a lot easier. So this is a little bit about how I got here, like standing in front of you today with a private practice. Going way back, like I started to show interest in nutrition back in high school. And then I started looking into, of course, like how can I make this my career? I think a lot of us kind of fall into that. And then things kind of like started escalating in terms of like how I was eating. I was starting to be like really rigid, like not allowing myself to have certain foods, wanting to just like eat this very perfect way. And it got to a point where it was just like kind of blaringly obvious. It wasn't until years later, but it was blaringly obvious that like what I was doing was no longer healthy. Like I was very stressed about like every food choice I was making. So that was like basically high school until I graduated from here. And during graduate school, I just randomly came across probably someone on Instagram who was like a provider who did intuitive eating and like health at every size approaches, and like I had never heard of those things. So I was like, what is this about? So I started doing a little digging and like learning more about anti-diet and weight neutral approaches, and it really like hit home for me, and I was like, this is really interesting, and I feel like makes a lot of sense, just like kind of returning to a very intuitive way of eating that I think our bodies all just really know, like we just aren't really listening to it all the time. So I was able to kind of like heal my own relationship with food, just learning more about the intuitive eating approach, and implementing some of that into my own life. And like once I experienced food freedom and like flexibility with food again, I just wanted that to be accessible to everyone. So like my specialty area is very much fueled by like that personal experience that I had with orthorexia or those really rigid tendencies I had. So yeah, that was like my fuel for the fire, in terms of like my passion area. And it was all happening really quick. Like once I passed my exam, I had a plan to accept a clinical job that I had interviewed for if they offered it to me. And I went ahead and did that. But a few weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. I had gotten married the fall before, and it wasn't necessarily planned. It was kind of a surprise, but I mean, it was amazing. But I hadn't really thought through, like I knew I wanted to start a private practice eventually. I hadn't really thought about the timeline very much. So when I found out I was pregnant, I was like, this is probably going to be something that will either prohibit me from starting this for like a couple of years to maybe even several years. So I either need to like start the groundwork now or just wait. So I decided to go ahead and start it, obviously, and basically from like March of 2022 until the May, so like 2 or 3 months worth, I was just like trying to get my private practice up and running while I was working full-time clinical work, while I was like 2 or 3 months pregnant. So it was a wild time, but I'm so happy that I went ahead and started it, because over the last year and a half, I've been able to step back from the clinical work, which I'm not as passionate about, and kind of stepping more into full-time with private practice. So it had been a roller coaster to get here. It was definitely not easy or without its challenges, but very much worth it and very fulfilling. So my day-to-day life looks very different every single day, which I really like. Clinical work was very like monotonous. With having a private practice, there are definitely some days that are heavier on actually seeing clients in sessions, and there are other days that end up being more like administrative work, emails, catching up on charting. So every day is very different, but every single day I'm definitely charting and I'm definitely checking my email. I get on a given day, we'll see anywhere from 1 to 7 clients. Sometimes I have like one really busy back-to-back day with clients, just depending on like what my follow-up schedule looks like for these particular clients. And then there are other days of the week where I have like a couple scattered around that are a little bit slower, and I'm able to like kind of catch my breath. So it kind of ebbs and flows throughout the week. Most days I am doing some sort of social media and marketing component. I'm not completely full, and I'm still kind of working towards doing private practice full time. So I am still really focusing on social media marketing and like getting my name out there. I typically will have like 1 to 2 consultation calls a week. Sometimes some weeks are really slow with that, and other weeks I might have even more than 2. Just kind of depends. But the consultation calls is basically like potential new clients who are maybe interested in working with me and have questions and want to get to know like how I practice and things like that. So sometimes I'll have a few of those scattered into my weeks as well. But it's been really nice like to be able to have the flexibility to block off parts of my day if I need to. You know, if I need to go to an appointment or if I like need some self-care time, and I know that, like if I look at my week, I know I'm gonna have like 3 back-to-back busy days. I can block off like a couple hours the next morning to do self-care and catch up on charting and things of that nature. So the flexibility component is really nice. something I do a lot as well, not every day or even every week or every month necessarily, but most months I'll have at least one networking event, particularly with like mental health providers. Since I'm in the disordered eating and eating disorder realm, I work really closely with other therapists, and psychiatrists and things of that nature. So I've gotten really connected with a lot of local like counseling groups and just single private practice owners who are mental health providers. So I do try to get my name out there with that. So that's oftentimes a really good way for me to get referrals just by word of mouth. And then like I collaborate on here with them. So that's just a really nice thing. And it's been really helpful in just continuing to grow my private practice as well. So that's a little bit about what my days might typically look like. The only things I would say I would do differently is I would have honestly started it sooner. I think like even right out of passing my exam, I would have gone ahead and just like started it. Because it's been so fulfilling and like the flexibility component has been so very worth it, and you can kind of take it at your own pace. I know most of us can't afford to necessarily not make any money, right? And like not take a like whatever job we can get our hands on right away. But if you go ahead and lay the groundwork for your private practice like right away, it's there for you. You can work on it on the side as you're able to, and just like slowly build from there. So you can take it at your own pace. So I wouldn't have waited. I would have just started it right away as soon as I passed my exam and got all of that stuff finalized. And then the only other thing I'll say is have a different phone number or phone for your business, because I tell you, I get at least 3 to 5 spam calls a day just because my phone number is out there for the world to see. So that is one tiny annoying thing, but that's really the only things I would change. I've had a great time so far, and don't really have many regrets at all. So, yeah. So, what questions do y'all have?
When you say laying the groundwork, what was like your first step?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Starting?
Yeah, so the first step, I would say, and I'm gonna get you a business card. Like if anyone's interested in seriously in like private practice or even relatively interested, I do have a document that I created for, I take a couple of brand new interns actually, but I created a document that gives you like the first round steps to starting. It's not like fully extensive, but it gives you a good gist. But the first thing you need to do is figure out your niche. Like what population are you gonna see? Even within that population, like what types of conditions do you wanna see? Like you have to get as niche down as possible, I think, before you start. And obviously that plays into like coming up with your business name, which is really the next step. Like if we're talking about starting an LLC, which is a limited liability corporation or whatever it is, just a small business. For tax purposes, it's LLC versus like there's other options, but I think most dietitians go with an LLC just because it just makes the most sense for like what we do. And tax purposes. So figuring out your niche and then coming up with a name is actually a really important part. A lot of dietitians will just name their business like what their name is, and that's totally fine as well. If you want to like think about in the future, if you're thinking like you want to add on dietitians to your team, it might be like a better idea to just have more of a generic name that they can all kind of fall under. So there's, things you want to think about in terms of the name, but the name is really important because you're going to have to check the government's records and make sure that that name is not already taken. So that's kind of like step one and two combined, like niching down, and because your name is like, I went with harvesting nutrition because I minored in horticulture while I was here at LSU, and my initial thought going into private practice, or my dream, I think, was to be able to integrate like helping people grow food for themselves and their families. I'm still very passionate about that. I actually have one or two clients who have home gardens, and I've been able to help them like with tips and like thinking about, hey, what can we make with all of this produce we're about to have coming in now that we've planted these things. Like that was something I was very interested in like incorporating into my work. But I feel like the need for that or like the marketing for that is just really tricky. So I haven't like focused as much on that in terms of marketing now, but like that was my initial thought. I wanted my name to kind of like be all encompassing in my passion for like growing food and helping people grow food, but also nourishing themselves and learning about nutrition. So, and it took me a while to decide on a name, like, and you can overthink it and overthink it and overthink it all you want. But I think take your time with the name, because it's really complicated to go back and change your mind later and then have to redo all of your tax information and all of that stuff. So you definitely want it to be something that's going to like carry on and be relevant for a long time. So that's the first step. And then the steps following that is really just to do with like getting a tax ID number, which isn't hard at all. And filing your articles with like your local government, which sounds fancy, but you just fill out contact information about what your business is going to be. And I will say, I had no idea what the startup costs for this was going to be going into it, and it really wasn't that much. Now, for someone in as much debt as we are, I mean, it's still something. But it was under $500 to like reserve my name, file my articles, even things like buying my website domain. What else? You can get around, like for a video platform, there's a free video platform that's like HIPAA compliant that you can use while you're starting out, so you don't have to pay for that. There is a free version of something called Simple Practice, which is like, or not, maybe not, I think you get a free trial and then it's like $30 a month, but that's a really great electronic health record system that you can use to do your charting and scheduling with your clients and things like that. So like all of those things combined, it was under $500 to just get started. And if you price your services right, like like if you have 1 or 2 client sessions, like that would pay itself off pretty quickly. So, yeah, that's a great question. It's not as intimidating, I think, as people think, but there's really no guidebook on it, so it can definitely feel overwhelming at first to think about.
How do you balance clinical and your private practice?
Good question. So I was in person. I was like a single site dietitian at Our Lady of the Lake in Gonzales. There's like a tiny little hospital over there, and it's only big enough to like for their for like full-time employee purposes. They would only staff 1 dietitian there, and honestly, it should have been less than a full-time position. Like I wasn't really busy the entire day. Like it wasn't super high demand. I was seeing maybe 4 to 8 like patients a day there at that hospital. So it wasn't a super big patient load. So honestly, that allowed me to have some mental capacity, like when I got off of work, to be able to think about things. And like I only had 1 or 2 actual clients like my first year open, just because I was pregnant, I was working full time, all of that good stuff. So I wasn't necessarily focused on like growing my private practice during that first year while I was like on site clinical. But you definitely at some point have to learn boundaries and like what you're capable of, because it could be very easy to burn out trying to do like 2 completely full-time jobs, especially like entrepreneurship. Like if you're the only person, you know, like you're the sole contact, like there is a lot to do on your end. So definitely be careful, like as you're thinking about maybe starting it on the side, just start small. Maybe don't focus on growing all at once, but really like lay the groundwork and just like get to know what you really want to do and who you want to serve, and make sure that like you have created a sustainable groundwork for the future, like once you are able to maybe step down a little bit from the clinical work. Like that was my approach. Again, most of us can't afford to not make some sort of money right away, and with private practice, you can maybe like round up some interest like before you actually get your feet off the ground, which would be ideal. But I mean, I've been in private practice for 2.5 years now, and I'm just now getting to a place where I have a full client load. So it takes a lot of time to build up that word of mouth to where you are actually full. So again, you can kind of take it at your pace. And I think just like, again, knowing your boundaries and like knowing like how much you can take on, like don't take 10 private practice clients and work full time clinical. Like take maybe 1 or 2, focus on them, give them a lot of your time, like get that experience in the one-on-one nutrition counseling realm, and like just focus on them. And then as you're able to, as you are starting to maybe market yourself a little bit more, kind of how I approached it was at some point when I was still full-time clinical, but I was working remotely for a different account, I just asked my boss, like, hey, can I drop down to 4 days a week? You know, I gave them plenty of notice, you know, and all that good stuff, but I started with just 1 day a week, where that was gonna be my dedicated private practice day. And then a couple months later, I was like, hey, can I go down to 3 days a week? And gave them plenty of notice, all that good stuff. They know that I have a private practice and I'm like growing that. So yeah, at this point, I'm only 2 days on the schedule for clinical work, but it's not full 8-hour days. It's like I'm working 6-ish hour days with that, so I have like a little bit left of the day to dedicate to my private practice. So I've just kind of been slowly tapering off in terms of my availability for clinical work, so that I can actually truly dedicate that time to private practice. But it can be very scary to like make that jump and like, you know, not necessarily know if you're able to like fill up that entire day and like make enough money. So it's a lot to think about and a lot to juggle, but yeah, it's worth it. Yeah.
You said you worked with private or performance nutrition. I was wondering if that was mostly like athletes or people who just wanted to be healthier, like working out and active.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say like right now, I've had like in the past, I've had a few what I would call athletes of some sort, not necessarily collegiate or like serious, but like, you know, people who are training for a race, like for a half marathon or something like that, or people who like have been athletes in the past and they're like kind of maintaining. So just like really talking to them about how to fuel their body properly, talking about the basic, you know, again, basic nutrition concepts, but also like how to strategically place like our pre-workout snacks and our post-workout nutrition, like what should be comprised of that. Sports nutrition is like something I feel like more recently been wanting to learn more about and dabble in and just be able to support that population, because I feel like a lot of people like nowadays do have some sort of side hobby, like running, especially. Like I feel like lots of people are getting into running and training for marathons and all that good stuff, but what I've seen, like me doing that as well and training for races, like a lot of people have no clue how to fuel themselves, like especially thinking about intra like sports or intra races, like, and me a couple years ago didn't know anything about that either, because it's a completely different realm, I feel like, of nutrition, but helping people understand like you have to eat carbohydrates, like if you're running 26 miles, like and it has to be simple carbohydrates that your body can absorb really quickly. So I would say like more so my focus has been running specifically with the sports nutrition, and I've like dived deep into like how to support that specific client population, but I do see a lot of just people who are wanting to maintain a very active workout routine, but again, they don't know like what should I eat before, what should I eat after, or do I need something during, or are electrolytes a good idea, you know, like, you know, so kind of gauging and helping people understand individually like with what they're doing with their fitness or their sports, like how I can help them. So
I kind of want an idea of like what exactly is intuitive.
yeah, so intuitive eating is a framework. It was developed by 2 dietitians back in the 80s, I think like the late 80s. So it's a framework, and it consists of like 10 principles. Now, the principles, you can like walk through them and look at them and kind of like understand like, okay, I get what this principle is about. But I would say like to just kind of I guess, encapsulate as like concisely as possible what intuitive eating is. It's really about getting back to what we naturally do with food. So if we think about like infants and toddlers, they know when they're hungry, they know when they're full, and at some point they start to develop preferences and like their own little personal nutrition related things. But I feel like as a result of the society we live in, which is very much diety, like people are hopping on and off diets, you know, people, they disconnect from those natural cues, like our hunger and our fullness cues, like, and depending on how you're brought up, a lot of times what I see in my work with clients especially is like something I see correlated together a lot is, you know, if they grew up in a household that enforced clean plate club, like you have to finish all of the food on your plate no matter how full you are or like whatever it is. If you don't like it, you know, when people are forced to kind of ignore their fullness cues consistently, like for that length of time, what happens later on in adulthood is they don't have the ability anymore to really like understand when they are feeling full, and it can result in binge eating, overeating, and feeling just in general disconnected from like what their body truly needs. So that's just one example, you know, of like how we can reconnect and how important it is to reconnect with our hunger and our fullness cues. But besides just like those physiologic hunger and fullness cues, a big part of intuitive eating is allowing for flexibility with our food and removing like the guilt and shame that people feel. With food, I mean, we know food is not something we can avoid or just like stop doing, like we require it and we need to eat like multiple times a day. And because of that, I think people they start to feel stuck because they don't know like what is best for them, and so they start following all these diets with really rigid rules. And because the rules are so rigid and it's black and white, you know, a lot of times people will start to feel guilt, you know, if they eat something that is not on their diet plan or something that they've deemed as bad or unhealthy. As humans, we only experience feelings of guilt when we do something we think is wrong. So with something like food that we cannot avoid, placing that morality on food is not super helpful for most people. So how I talk about food with clients is like not really labeling as like healthy or unhealthy, but more so like what's more nutritious or less nutritious. Because at the end of the day, the unhealthy or the bad or the less nutritious foods, it's not to say that they are completely, there's no nutrition in it. Most of the time, if you think of like a bag of chips, for instance, that's like the most common example people feel guilty about snacking on. Like chips, I mean, especially if we're talking about potato chips, they're made from potatoes, they're a quick carbohydrate, they've got some sodium, some minerals, potassium, like it's not that there's no nutrition in it, it's just might be less nutritious than, let's say, an apple, right? Like there's gonna be fiber in there, there's hydration, there's still a lot of like micronutrients in there. So like trying to remove the harsh labels and just allowing for more neutrality helps people it actually empowers people to like be able to reconnect to those cues I was talking about, and to be able to have the capacity to like make intuitive choices that feel good to them. And sometimes that might be the less nutritious food, but like sometimes it might also be the more nutritious food. So like finding that balance, I think, is where a lot of people struggle and where intuitive eating can help. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
Are there any certifications that you're interested in or working on?
That's a good question. So you can get intuitive eating certified. It just takes a lot of time and it is pretty costly as well. It's something I'm definitely interested in. I also would in the future like to potentially get like certified eating disorder certified, but that also takes time, experience, and more money. Like all of the certifications will cost a good bit of money, which I guess is fair to a certain extent. But those are the two that I'm looking at. If I decide to go more in the sports nutrition route, like there is a certification for, you know, becoming like a sports nutrition dietitian, certified, CE, whatever it is. But for now, I'm like kind of just working on building my private practice, and like I think I'll hopefully kind of land on where I want to go certification wise in the next few years or so. But there's lots of options out there, and continuing education is obviously a requirement. So that's been really nice to just like have those opportunities to continue learning. There's always something new to learn. So yeah, but kind of up in the air with certification. So any other questions? Awesome. Well, thank y'all for having me. If anyone, I had a slide about my business cards, but if anyone is interested in private practice and you'd like me to send you that little document I talked about, kind of with like the general steps, just grab a business card and you can email me, and I'd be happy to send it to you. It's not like, it's not going to tell you every single thing you need to know, but in general, it will at least kind of help direct you in the right place if you're looking to start. So, yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Oh, is it this, the contact?
Yes.
Does anyone want to take a picture before I go to our
Yeah, and I have some visible ones as well.
Okay.
Alright. And my Instagram is also on there. Like, if y'all are curious about learning more about SNDA, I do talk about it. It's super long.
Dr. McKinney has a little gift to thank you for speaking in Nap Hall. I don't know if you parked by Nap Hall, but
I parked in
Yeah.
Right over there. But I can go with her.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm bringing some of the student samples in because they're doing Thanksgiving baskets. I just don't know if you need to go now or.
Yeah, no, I don't have a time crunch. I can wait.
Okay. So our last event is on Tuesday, December 3rd at 4 to 5:30. We have our SNDA mid-year success little meeting and celebration, and it's going to be holiday themed, and they're going to announce the SNFS scholarship recipient, and there's also going to be a little holiday raffle, so mark your calendars, and if you can come join us in the Nap Hall Lounge. So some raffle items are, there's going to be a crock pot with a self-stirring lid, a smoothie and snack gift set, Dr. McKinney's favorite mushroom coffee with matching glass, which I have tried. It's like really interesting. It has like collagen and mushrooms, and it's supposed to like not give you as jittery as regular coffee, but it's pretty good. And then new makeup mystery bags from Ipsy. And then some Dashing Diva nail products in a travel bag. And then a Wild Fable beaded purse with 5 Sin's Life of the Party perfume. I don't know if I know what that is. So tickets will be $1 each, 6 for $5, and you can purchase them at the event or in advance with SNDA's Venmo. So we have our spring membership dues, which are $12 for the spring. They were $20 for the year. So if you need to pay dues, or if you know any friends that want to join for the spring, let them know. Our chair reports. Wasn't deleted. So we have our Thanksgiving basket drive tonight. It's in the Nap Hall Lounge, and we still need some money to make up for the ingredients that Dr. McKinney bought. So if you or a family member wants to donate, just Venmo SNDA at LSU. And I believe we have like $45 to like make up
So-
for the amount we spent. We what?
That's easy. I mean.
Yeah, that's pretty easy.
$75.
So, and then we're doing the Thanksgiving basket prep after the meeting. We're gonna like walk together if you can
I'm
stay.
walking anyone who's going to Thanksgiving basket. I'm walking back to McKinley's office, and y'all can walk over to that hall with me.
It should be like pretty quick and easy. Just put all the items in a bag and tie a bow on it, and good to go. And then we still have our volunteer opportunities. You can check out the Canva doc for this, and just make sure you log your events with SNDA form. And if you have any more opportunities, please share those. And then we have Land's annual virtual conference on Friday, March 21st and March 28th on Zoom. There's details on their annual awards and scholarships on their Facebook and Instagram. And then we still have some merch. You can email Dr. McKinley about it if you would like any of our sweatshirts or t-shirts. And then we have the discounted merch too. It's not here tonight, but it's in her office. Like the $5 t-shirts, and the sweatshirts are $20. And then our member of the month is Cameron, so thank you. She's been excelling at volunteering and serving as a mentor in the Tiger Tech mentoring program. So I'm sure Dr. McKinney will email you your and then our spring meeting schedule, we're still trying to decide if we're gonna have it Tuesdays or Thursdays. If y'all have a preference, y'all can share what day works better, and it's gonna be at the same place. Most likely at 4:30. So, yep, we'll send an email out once we know for sure. And thank y'all for joining us all next semester. If y'all don't follow us on social media, you should follow us. But yeah, thank y'all for coming. And sign in.